Welcome from Germany. This is we're over here in the US. I got with me today George, Abraham, who many of you have talked to before about App Builder. He's over in New Jersey. I'm in Michigan. JJ is on as well. He's over in New Jersey. Or no, he's in Philadelphia now. So we're very widely dispersed. Infragistics has our headquarters in New Jersey. We all used to be in the office and we would see each other every day. And then because of COVID, we scattered and now the office is optional. Pretty much, actually, it's not even really open yet because they're just starting to remove restrictions in New Jersey. But I don't think we're going to have many people going back because like many of you, Pedro, Alex, Heinz, Conrado, everyone's kind of working from wherever, like from Panama. If I could be in Panama, I would be in Panama right now giving this webinar. I flew into Panama once. What a beautiful, lush green country, just unbelievable. So cool to have everyone here today. What we're going to do is talk about App Builder. It's going to be all demo. I have like 2 slides. The reason I have this slide is pretty much from housekeeping. You're going to get the recording and the slides after. You'll get an email from marketing with the slides, the recording. We want to make it interactive, so please ask questions during the talk. George will be manning the Q&A and the chat while I am talking, and then when he's talking, I'll be doing it. And we try to answer the questions out loud at the end. And this is pretty rapid fire webinar. Hopefully some of you have seen this before. If not, it'll be new to you. But yeah, so with that, why don't we see what slide I have next? I always forget what I actually have in this deck. So App Builder, if you're not familiar, 100% cloud-based WYSIWYG. Basically what we're trying to do is eliminate all of the redundant, mundane, boring code that you need to write. We want to eliminate the fact that you need to be an expert at CSS to do web apps. We want to eliminate every aspect of coding that you probably dislike, which is when marketing or sales says, hey, we need this thing over here. Can you get it done tomorrow? We want to be able to give you a product that makes it super easy to design screens, wire up some data, and then you can either take that little bit that you created, move it right into your application, or you can just build your whole UI with the product. We don't really care. Right now, we do Angular code generation and Blazor code generation. Blazor is in beta still. We are going to release it probably by the end of this month, maybe sooner. And then some of the features today that you're going to see are also beta. You can access them, but they are being worked on actively, and we're going to release them this month. So there's some current stuff you're going to see today and some brand new stuff that you're going to see today as well. Tomorrow, I think tomorrow or Monday, I get the days mixed up. We are releasing an update to our Angular product. So you will have updates with new components, new controls. The big thing there is we're shipping a brand new pivot grid. So if you want an awesome pivot grid where you've got like moving columns and rows around and looking at your data in different ways, you'll be excited to see that, plus a bunch of other stuff. So with that, I'm going to just jump right into a demo, and I'm going to walk through a bunch of different things here and get everyone familiar with the App Builder and what you can do. So the first thing that I want to do, and let me get a new browser window here and stick this guy here, is I'm going to go to infragistics.com. And to do everything that I'm doing, go to infragistics.com, go to design development, and just click on the App Builder link. There are 2 flavors of App Builder. One that you jump right online. It's a SaaS product. So this is a cloud-based product. So if I click try App Builder, I just jump right into the product online and I can start experiencing it. If I actually click here, whoops, actually I'll click down here and I'll sign out. And then I'll go back into this. You can log in with your Google ID, Microsoft ID, Apple ID, or your Infragistics ID. It doesn't matter. I'll do my Microsoft ID. My account is linked on the Infragistics back end, and I'm right back where I was before. We also have an Electron version of this. So you can download this as an app, and it'll like be down here, and it's like not in the browser window, but it's still using the cloud. It's just a nice shell if you're not familiar with Electron. Oh, and I want to highlight Zdravko is on the chat as well. He is the team lead and a senior developer architect on this product. So anything Zdravko says, just believe him, because he's the one that's making sure this thing gets shipped every day. So what I want to do here is I want to click New App. So we give you a few options here. There's some pre-built sample apps like so. We have some default layouts, and then you can also import designs from Sketch and Adobe XD. If you're just starting, what I would do is go grab a sample app just to get yourself familiar with what the product does. So you'll see here on the left-hand side, I've got my different views of the application like so. On this side here, I've got my toolbox. I've got my data sources. I've got my theming. So, you know, I can change themes like with the click of a button, just like this. My themes are changing. You can see them in the background. Or of course, I can create my own theme based on Material Fluent Bootstrap. I can change colors, typography, roundness, or elevation. So just a quick walkthrough here. And then we also have this assets section. So the nice thing is within your workspace, any images that you either upload or you're importing from Sketch or Adobe XD go over to your assets. And what that gives you the ability to do, for example, is if you're doing something here where you've got a component, you can go over to the property window and you can pick what you want from your assets, or it can be like a URL, or it can be data bound. So here, if I want to change this to look like these rotors, I can do that really quickly. So that's where you get the power of having assets plus cloud-based stuff. At the same time, you'll notice here as I click around, all of these are real components that are property driven, that you can change styles, you can change the way they look, change the way they behave. And then finally, one thing that's important when you're getting started is that this is actually a master page with some sub pages. So if I go back to my master page and I look at here where I've got these navigations, how am I actually going from page to page? Everything has an interactions option. So you can do a navigation, open, close, show, hide to any particular screen that you want in the application. So in this case, if I just go back to my master view, I click preview, here I am, you can see that I'm actually doing navigation here. You'll also see that on the right-hand side, I've got all of my source code, and I can go and look at individual screens. And what I mentioned before is, let's say marketing or someone comes in and says, hey, we need this changed. Let's say you just change it real quick. You can just say, oh, here, I'm just going to copy this, right click, copy this, and then paste it into my code. You don't always need to get the entire app. Of course, if you want the entire app, you can always click push to GitHub. We'll automatically create a repository and we'll sync this over for you. So in this case, I just publish it. And this can happen in Angular or Blazor. Later this, maybe in H1, I would say, before the June, July timeframe, you're going to see web components in React as well. They're getting pushed out a little bit just because we've got kind of a lot going on right now and things are taking a little bit longer. But you will see us push out additional languages. Well, actually, the final two, React and web components, in the first half of this year. And then I get requests, hey, you're going to do Flutter, WYWIWYG. Yeah, we're looking at that, but really the primary purpose of this for this year is around web. So let me go back to my projects, and I'm going to start a new app again from scratch with the default layout, header, left nav. And what I want to do now is go to my view, and I want to replace this with a data grid. So I'm going to do a Control E, which is a shortcut, which gives you a list of all the components, and then you can start typing, and then you can find things in the list. Well, what I want to do here is I want to do a grid. So I'm going to grab a grid, and I'm going to set this to 100% width and 100% height, like so. Now, we ship with the product some dummy data. So if I go over here to my data sources, see where it says mock data? This is dummy data. So I can go over here on the right-hand side in the properties panel, select the Northwind dummy data, and then I will see data in my grid. But what if I actually want to get real data that I might have in the cloud somewhere? So there's two options to do that. The first option is just doing a REST call to JSON data that lives in the cloud. So that would be more static. And then the second option is actually connecting to a web API that you have in the cloud. I'm going to show you both right now. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to go to this cool app. I've shown this a dozen times for you folks that have seen it. I'm sorry, but this is the fastest way for you to get data into the app builder is using Excel to JSON.io. Now I'm going to browse and I'm going to go to this FinTech file, FinTech 2500 rows, click open. We load that up to the cloud. We're doing some parsing and a little conversion. And next thing you know, this shows up inside of the spreadsheet, all the data. And then on the right-hand side, you can see all of the JSON for this. So what's cool about this app is it's using the Infragistics spreadsheet. You can edit your data. You can start from scratch, do your own data. But I just want to upload this because I want to reuse this. So I'm going to get this link. It's creating a share link. I'm going to copy it. Now, if I add a new tab here, and I just paste this in, this is all of a sudden I took an Excel file and I've got JSON data. So if you just want to use dummy data, mock data, fake schema, this is how easy it is to get going. Now, let me go back to my application here and I want to swap this out. So I'm going to do a new data source. I'm going to do a REST API. I'm going to call this my tech data, and I'm going to add a URL. So what's my URL going to look like? It's going to look like what I just showed you. And I'm going to click done. Now this is, there's no gate to this. There's no security, no nothing like that, though we do support that. You're going to see a little bit of that later in the demo. So here I have table one. I'm going to change this to fin data, hit the enter key. You can see where I'm getting my data from, and you can see all of the fields that I'm highlighting. You'll also see here that I got a little notice, hey, a couple fields, we don't know what they are. I'm going to say, well, that's a date. And I don't even know what that is. Chart, maybe a string. Oh, well, that's fine. So I've got my FinTech data. I've got my fin data. So I'm going to click done. So now over here on the left-hand side, what you'll see is the columns in my data source and the data that I basically selected. So if I go back to my grid and I go back to its properties, there's my FinTech data. Let's go grab our data that we just added. And just like that, I've got all the data in my grid. If I go over to the preview mode, you're going to see all of the data here in the grid. And even cooler, we went through and did all of the column definitions and options based on that schema for you. Now, the way that the Angular grid works is there's two modes. One mode is, you define all your column headers. The other mode is auto generate equals true. So this guy right here, if you said auto generate equals true, you could remove all this and then you just kind of have fixed fields, and we just try to infer from the schema what you should be displaying. So in this case, we want to do the right thing, because the other thing I can do with this now is if I select my grid and I go to features, I can go and start adding more features to this grid. So note that I'm just selecting here from the list and the grid is changing. Like all these things are kind of happening now on the grid. So just like that, I'll go back to preview and I got my toolbar added. All of my columns were updated with the different fields that I just added. And if I hide this code view, you can see here that now I've got this nice interactive experience that is the data grid in real life, working just like you would expect. So now let's say I want to go and get this out to my code. Let's go publish this to GitHub. we'll do a new repository and call this one with code, create the repository. And just so you see that there's no smoke and mirrors here, when I click publish, and it's going to be Untitled App 5 here. Let's go to GitHub. Let's go to the source. This is the entire Angular application. This could also be Blazor. I go to services. We actually are pointing to the JSON in the cloud using HTTP client. If I go back to the app and I go back to view 1, I look at my HTML. This is my definition for the grid that you saw earlier. If I look at the TypeScript, again, this is everything that I have here. So with the app builder, it's super easy just to get going with this, with all of these different data bound controls. So real quickly, if I go back here, yeah, I'm not going to answer questions. I'll let Zdravko do that. I get distracted and we'll go down a tangent. So I'm going to show you guys one other data bound control, which I always think is cool. It's the card view. The card view is really useful because it allows you to do some fairly complex layouts. And again, all these controls can be data bound. So I'm going to click data and I'm going to tell this guy to use the employees table from Northwind. And you'll notice now I've got this card view. I actually wanted to wrap a bit here. So I'm going to tell the container, which in this case happens to be a row layout, to wrap this guy. And what we're doing with this is we're saying show five records. You can show 10, you can show 100, whatever the heck you want. But the neat thing is you can go ahead now and start doing data binding on the individual items within the component. So you can see here, I bound last name, first name. There's my last name, first name. And actually, I want to change this to be a, actions column is kind of cool, right? So I'm going to go here. I've got actions column. You can do an avatar or just an image. You can have content. Now, if I select this guy and I select the individual items inside of it, they as well can be data bound. So I'm going to put this to be my title, cost accountant. And let's see here. I can't quite select the image because I can bind it right here. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to say this is the avatar. So boom, just like that. Let me go to preview. You've got data bound stuff right in your application. If I go to code view, you can go here and you can see we are doing all of the data binding for you. We have the container set up in CSS. And so like very easily and quickly, just mucking around and experimenting, you can have an unbelievable data bound experience and then get the code and just start using it in your application. And then the nice thing here is if I go back to edit and I publish this to GitHub, it's like, hey, wait a minute. You already got this. You want to do a pull request? I can say, yeah, do a pull request. And then it just flows through your normal process with pull request and however you guys are doing it. So that's the basic data binding and connecting to data in App Builder. You can connect to a live JSON REST URL, JSON based, or you can upload JSON data. What I want to show you now is some preview stuff that we are going to ship within the next few weeks, month in the sandbox. And George and I are both going to demo this now because I really want you to get excited about what's coming. So in real life, you guys are creating web APIs, right? So this is an example of a web API inside of Visual Studio. And if you're confused on how to create a web API, it is the easiest thing in the world to do if you're like super experienced with the cloud and kind of how things work, or if you know that there's this tool called the Entity Framework Power Tools. And I don't want to get into a discussion about Entity Framework. I know there's a lot of strong opinions about it, but to get started, to understand how it works, you can splat out a web API for your entire database in like no time. It does all the work for you. Now, Microsoft with .NET 6 said that Entity Framework has gone from being able to do 250,000 transactions per second to like 600,000. So they've dramatically improved where Entity Framework was in the past. So if you were a naysayer on Entity Framework, you may want to revisit it just to give it a chance again. But the reason I want to show this is because I have some web APIs here, category, customers, orders. And what we're doing is if I run this, all we're doing is we're saying, generate this Swagger output and let me get some data. So I'm going to click try it out and boom, click execute. And I go off to the cloud. I get my data. This is a local web API. So I'm running this locally. You can see what I would get. So that's what I did. But the difference is I deployed it to the cloud. So the way that the cloud works is a couple ways. You can have your Swagger definition like I just showed you, or you end up with a YAML file, which is the Swagger definition. So if you go and you do a Google on Swagger, you'll see that that's kind of how you might get some data into or a definition of that Swagger file. So I'm going to do the same demo. I'm going to go here. I'm going to delete view one. The only difference is I'm going to go to data. I'm going to click the plus sign. I'm going to click REST API. And there's this new option here to add a Swagger URL. So let's go ahead and add the Swagger URL. And you can see this is my definition. It's up in the cloud. It's on Amazon. So this no smoke and mirrors here. This is happening in real time. And this is a sandbox. So if it crashes, sorry about that. But I think we should be okay here. So now you got this new screen. I've got a URL in the cloud. Do I need authorization? Is it actually live and working? Let's hit send. It's like, yeah, there, we got a 200 response. So what I want to do is I want to get my customers, categories, employees, orders. Cool. Let me select data. Basically what you did before. I'm going to select the fields that I want to display. All live data. I'm going to click done. And that's it. Now I am pointing to the cloud. And getting the data that I need. And I know Zdravko is going to kill me because I'm actually not using the updated build that you just sent me. Sorry. So I had to, there was a little bug there. It said incomplete, but it's complete. So now I've got data. It's linked to the cloud. Now it's lit up in my application. So if I do the same thing and I'm going to do a Control E and do grid, I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to do a couple cleanup things here. I'm going to say, let's make that 100% wide. Let's make this 100% high. Now in my data source, there's my Northwind test 2. There's my customers and boom, just like that, App Builder is lit up with live data from the cloud. Why is this cool? Because this is just the beginning for us. Like what we're going to ship in the next, like I said, few weeks to a month is around gets, right? I'm going to get data from the cloud. Then we're going to do in the next release, 4 or 6 weeks later, posts, puts, deletes. And then 4 or 6 weeks later, you're going to be able to say, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. What if I wanted to add like a combo box and do a master detail because I've got parameterized URLs with my web API? Then you're going to get that. So throughout the first half of this year, you're going to be able to literally do all of the data access that you want just through point and click inside of the App Builder. So with that, what I want to do is let George take over. He's going to show a couple additional features in the dialogues and kind of how it works. And then we will wrap this guy up. So George, I will stop sharing and you can take it from here. And you're on mute too, George, FYI.
Yeah, I'm just trying to unmute myself. Okay, excellent. So Jason already showed you what is the basic approach for using a Swagger endpoint or an open API level specification. So I'm going to do the same thing, with the only difference is I'm going to use a slightly different data source. And in this data source, it has some additional fancy stuff happening. So I'm going to copy a URL again, copy that link, and I'm going to add it to the URL. And you can see there's an OpenAPI logo because I'm using the updated build. So there are more things fixed in the updated build, but there might be things which break in this updated build. But the other, you will see that the moment I got it, the description, it's actually coming from that definition itself. And the name has also been updated. And of course, I can change it to my own name. And now if you see when I hit select endpoints, it's fetching a lot more, endpoints because this is a much more richer kind of a Swagger definition. And here you can see that these endpoints are actually protected. So there's an authorization which is required, and the one which Jason was showing you, which says no authorization required. But in my case, I have an API key which I can apply. So I just copied it, and I can do it at a global level, or I can do it individually. So as you can see on the right side, for every endpoint I'm selecting, it's actually showing, okay, what is the expectation for that endpoint in order for you to use it. And I can add the authorization at this level, but I like to do is just do it globally. I'm gonna come in here, paste in my API key, hit done. And you can see that all these things have now checks on it. That means it's actually ready to go. And now if I want to try something for this particular API, I can just say hit send. And it's going to go and fetch the data for the countries, and it's saying success. And I can actually see what kind of response I actually got out of it, right? And this is kind of useful because sometimes when you're using somebody else's definition, like in this case, I don't exactly know the nature of the data which exists. So for example, in here it says ISO code AL, right? And this kind of information is useful because we also do support parameters. So if I go and click on this particular API, it says, hey, you know what? In order for you to use it, you actually need to fill out this params, that's a required field. So I already know from the previous fetch that there was something called AL. So I can try typing AL. It doesn't require any headers. And I can do the same send. And if I now look at the request, you can see it's now gone and fetched the details for that particular AL ISO code. With that, I can pretty much do the same thing. I can just say select, and at this point, it's actually fetching a copy of the data, the real data from the source. And this is something which is unique for App Builder, is that we actually provide you data during design time without actually having to going in and hitting it over and over again. And that's why it's kind of slightly different with this selection checkbox approach, is that when I'm selecting it, I'm also going to get you some data. The part which we are working on right now, and which will be an improvement when we release, is that even if something fails, right? So you try to make a request and it failed, we will actually dynamically generate some mock data for you so that you're not actually stuck because you couldn't figure out the API. And we will create that mock data based on the schema, which we have actually detected. So now that I have this country selected here, I'm going to go and do another one. Let's say orders. Oh, wow. So this orders has its tons of other stuff. In here, I can hit a send. And again, same thing. I'm just exploding this API, and it's taking a while because this is actually fetching a lot of stuff. And I'm going to wait for my success to happen here. But as I say, this is where the mock data also really helps you, that you can actually just zoom through this stuff. And you can see this ID, it's like a really long ID. And this is something which we are improving right now to actually interact with this kind of a model here. But once you have this ID, that's what I meant by saying exploding the API yourself, is when you go to order ID, it's basically asking you for ID, right? So you need that information from the previous request in order to get it. But for me, this is fine. I'm just going to get orders. And again, at this point, it's going fetching a data. It's creating my collection. I say select data. And now the same thing that Jason was showing you earlier. I select everything. And in this one, you see it also pulled in some nested arrays. So it knows that, okay, this is actually a much more detailed kind of a record. So I'm able to get everything from here. I can select everything. So I got 15 fields. I hit done. And now this is the data source, the countries and orders. And just like Jason did, I'm going to come in here, demo webinar. Oh, this has got junk. This is what happens when you use somebody else's API. But you can see that this is the kind of demo data we are able to actually show you while you're using this designer, right? And the same thing happens when you are actually, say, like Jason was showing you, that I want to actually bind something. And in most other tools, you will see that the design surface kind of looks like dead, where it just shows you like, okay, here's where the data is supposed to be. You can never see it till you hit preview. But we would like you to design with data design with what happens when data shows up, how does the layout get affected, and be able to take action to make, changes to the UI to accommodate this flowing data. And that's what is really helpful with this kind of an approach we are doing is we are actually fetching data for you from your real source. If that fails, we would always revert you to a mock data. And then you can always continue your design time experience with mock data. And then when you're ready, if you have more information, you can make an actual request. And for that, I can just go back to my data source here. This is the one I just created. I can say select endpoints. I can go in here and send another request and then remove that mock label, which would show up here. You can override that mock label and then start using your real data from that point onwards. So that's the stuff I wanted to cover with Jason did not touch is the ability to say, okay, how do I use authenticated endpoints? On top of that, how do we handle parameters? Like if I have to pass values, and then how you make use of the response in order to explore the API. And some of you, if you're familiar with tools like Postman or I think Visual Studio Code has a plugin. It's called Thunder Client. All of them are doing pretty much the same thing, but here we are actually exposing a way for you to do Swagger or Open API kind of definitions right from inside the app builder. That's it, Jason, for what we're working on in terms of Swagger. And then there were some questions in the chat. I'll just want to point out that we are actually fetching these other endpoints which we would like to support. So you can see that we're getting the put, post, and then delete if it was present. We are actually getting it from that Swagger definition. And then when we start implementing those feature sets on the app builder side, it's just setting the foundation for allowing you to do more richer interactions while building your application, right? So for now, we are supporting everything which is bindable, like you're getting an array. So those are the ones which are exposed here. So you can still select it and create. So I can say, okay, whatever. I can put in the details for my put request, put in the parameters, get the data, and it will show up in your toolbox as available. It's just that you cannot use it right away, but the data source can be connected with Swagger.
All
This
right.
time, that's it, Jason.
And George, there was a bunch of questions. I think Zdravko got all of them. One of them that just came across, what about authentication and putting token in variables for authorization? So is there other authorization methods that we're going to look
Sure.
at besides app key? API key?
Excellent question. Yeah, so depending on the Swagger definition, if the Swagger definition says, "Hey, we use bearer token, we use API key, we use the HTTP basic, which is like a username and password." If the definition file has it, when you actually open this authorization dialog, those options would automatically show up here. So you can actually provide API key and some like two other authentication methods, whatever you require, it'll show up here. And once that's added here, even when you are exploring something locally, you go to the authorization tab. If that requires some specialized authentication, it'll actually show up as the things you can provide here. But those are the three we are supporting right now: API key, the bearer token, and the username password, which is the HTTP basic.
All right, cool. A poll just got launched. If you guys can go through and answer the handful of questions in the poll, that'll help us for what you really care about. Also post it in the chat if there's something we're missing or that you would like to see. Specifically, we're working on REST now, but there's plans for other data connectors in the future. So there's a lot of action going on there and really how you want to use the product. I think master detail is a big one. We got a lot of feedback on. People want to be able to do that. So those things are in the backlog. Harold, yes, App Builder is included in your subscription if you've purchased Infragistics. So if you own an Ignite UI subscription, an Infragistics Pro, or an Infragistics Ultimate, you have the product. So just log in and magically it will be there. Any security issues using live authorizations in the App Builder environment? It's using HTTPS. So it's like any other SaaS app. You're logged in. with your ID. You're putting in you're in your basically your own development sandbox there. But if you're super security conscious and you don't want to do any of that, we do have an on-prem option. So you can have the whole app builder will give you a container. It's a different pricing model, but you can deploy that on your internal servers. That's one option. And then the second option is I showed you Excel to JSON. You can just create dummy schemas with fake data. And you can use that as well. So you don't necessarily have to do anything extreme to get a feel for the application. Errol, we will send you an email later today or tomorrow morning with the slides. And actually, there were no slides, so you probably won't get slides, but with a link to the recording. A couple things that I do want to highlight. I'm going to reshare my screen. There we go. Yes, share. I want to go over here to GitHub, and we've got the app builder repo. This is where you should start posting all of your issues. We will respond very quickly to this. This is a new repo we put up maybe about a month ago, and we want to start pushing people in this direction to have these conversations. If you're just a Ignite UI for Angular customer, you know that everything we do is public, transparent, out in the open. You can see everything that we do with the product. So there's no secrets. There's no like, oh, this is the other list of things we're working on. Everything's right here, and it'll be the same for App Builder as well. And then also we have a Discord channel, and I would really like everyone to go check that out and start having different discussions there. We post information. We've got the product team there. So, you know, if there's things that you are running into, you've got questions, you know, we'll be pretty responsive there, especially because, you know, we're all in different time zones. Like I'm in the Eastern time zone of the US. Zdravko is in Bulgaria. I'm not sure, GMT +7 right now or 6 or something like that. You know, we've got folks over in Japan, Australia, you know, you name it, South America. We've got guys in Montevideo that work on this product team as well. We have an office in Montevideo. So they're all over the place. And so we try to stay a little bit present here as well. We're just trying to create maybe a little bit more conversation. So with that, yeah, as George said, we'll generate mock data based on the schema. So let's say you just want it, we pull in the schema, and we'll give you the option to just generate fake data based on that schema as well. All right, with that, I'll just run through some of the highlights of the poll. Looks like people are pretty content with REST, but they also want to see SQL Server. A lot of developers on the call today, over 80%. Everyone sees some value here in App Builder. And it looks like about half of the folks are not using any design tools. We've had a couple webinars in the past on design to code. We're going to continue to have those. Folks like the desktop to web aspect, learning Angular, getting help with web layout, getting help with styling and design. Looks like we're real heavy on Angular and Blazor. Almost half the folks would be using Angular and maybe a little bit less than that Blazor. So we're going to continue to improve that. And there's a lot of rich client too going through this. VS Code and Visual Studio, some JetBrains users, about 10%. And then you'd like to see more how-to blogs and more videos. Overwhelming. We get it. We heard it. We're going to keep pushing these out. If you go over to YouTube, so let me bring this over. Let me find, let me minimize this. I'm on the Reveal. I'm logged in on our studio. Here is Reveal. So let me just type in Infragistics App Builder, and I'll move this over. Okay, so we do have a bunch of videos here that you can look at in terms of App Builder tutorials, getting started with App Builder. If you go over to the Infragistics channel and then go over to videos, you'll see like compile and run an Angular app from App Builder, export data, with App Builder, create a Blazor app with App Builder, bind REST API data, branding and styling with App Builder, creating a full featured grid with App Builder, using dialogues, syncing to GitHub, etc. So we're just going to continue to churn these out and give you more help where you need it, because that's where you need it. Single example, you have a simple example using REST API, App Builder, SQL Server database. So Lynn, here's the deal. When we launch this officially, and when you go here into the App Builder, and when you click data and you go through this little data source, we're going to have sample data sources here. So we're going to have the cloud already set up. In the meantime, you know, you can use this sample data to experiment with that I have here. I don't know how durable the server is. It might crash, but there you've got that URL. So you can actually use that to play with. Thank you, Heinz. I appreciate it. And I think we've got most of the things answered. Yeah, this product, when we talk about performance, there's no product in the market like this product. Like in terms of pure performance, scrolling, horizontal and vertical scrolling, we have the virtualization down. We've got remote virtualization. You can have the grid be working with data in memory. You can have paging to go get more data. You can have the grid be like a dummy display where every interaction is actually going back to your server. There is really no comparison in the market for what we can do with this product. I mean, we look at competitors and people have their favorite control vendors, but from a performance perspective, this guy is fast. And I'll also highlight this sample here. I'll paste it in to everyone, and you know, you can go to town with this guy, live data. I'll make it bigger on my screen, and you can see here we've got all these rows in the grid. I can bump this up to 10,000 rows. Notice, whoops, let me grab this. The scrolling is buttery smooth. My columns aren't getting out of whack. I can click live all prices, and you'll notice now that we're pumping in data in real time. I just don't have any of these performance issues with the product. I can change the theme. This is 10,000 rows, you know, just happily moving along. Nice thing too, whoops, let me go to export to Excel. This is always nice, is that the export to Excel for us is different than everyone else as well. You'll get a lot of folks showing you CSV files that are like flat data. This is an actual Excel file that is being generated based on your data structure. So this is what I just opened up. So you'll see here, I've got my Excel data, and I can collapse and expand the individual groups of data just like I would inside the grid. So this is no joke. I mean, if you got flat data, it exports. If you got hierarchical data, it exports correctly. We're not trying to give you a subpar experience that you would give to your users. So the grid's super impressive. Basically has, you know, all of your core features that you would need. This is nice too. Let's go ahead and pin some columns to the left, and I can there get my column pinning, but you sort of get the idea that, you know, the grid can do a lot of stuff. All right, so I think, yeah, Pedro, if you're having issues with large data sets, let us know. Let's take a look at it. You can have virtual data, or it can all be in memory. So really, it's up to you. Does App Builder offer automation in terms of like linking into like if this then that, or Microsoft Power Automate? No, we don't do anything like that. You're just designing screens and building screens and getting the code for those screens. So our sweet spot is helping you create the user experience and all the code that goes with it. And then we generate all the production ready code. And then you're going to go in there and you're probably going to add your own authorization. You might add some domain specific stuff. So, you know, you still got to write code, but we want to take away that 80% that's really hard. So automation and exporting data. Well, the grid exports data based on events from the user like this, but we also have a server-side component. So for example, if you're doing a Visual Studio app, you can just add our ASP.NET Core Excel library, and you can do this server side as well. It's really up to you how you want it to go. So you get all that ASP.NET Core stuff you can run in the cloud. You get the Angular, Blazor, React web components that you can run on the client with Ignite UI. All right, I think that wraps it up. Harold, you know, if you have any, or if anyone has any other questions, let's go back here. Feel free to email me at JasonB, George at GAbraham. We are here to answer your questions and help. You can also just jump up on the Discord and ask some questions there. And yeah, we hope to see you at the, oh, well, we got a couple other things. I can never, so Ken says I can never locate your YouTube live link. JJ, can you send an email to everyone on that? Yeah, so the recording, Aristotle, will be available. You can share it with everyone. As soon as you get it, we're going to email today or tomorrow, and you'll be able to get that. And then JJ, who's helps me out here with the YouTube live, will do that. And we're going to start some new experiments on YouTube live where you'll get a notification like 3 days before that this, you know, the little bell will ring on YouTube if you get those things. So thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate your time today. And we will see you at the next webinar. Have a great rest of the week. And thank you, George. And thank you, JJ. And thank you, Zdravko. I really appreciate it. We will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.